Hi, Louie.
Hey, Gavin.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm quarantined, but I am blessed and highly favored, okay?
Oh, me too. Booked and blessed, clearly.
Booked. Yeah, the bookends are the front door and the back door, okay? We are homeward bound, Sally Field.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the Mixed Reviews in this very trying time. We are a film podcast in which we take a subject such as an actor, director, or mini genre, and we do a whole history, and we talk about the good, and we talk about the bad, and we mix it up.
Gavin, did you say whole history?
Whole history. Wow, you really haven't gotten out, have you?
No,
You have been
I have
staying
not.
Indoors.
Listen,
That's good, though. That's
ladies
good. I calculated today that I've not been outside in 20 days. So
20
I'm
years. Gavin
doing
has
fine.
not left in 20 years. It's for everyone's safety, truly.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I have been outside once in a while, but very much not a lot, and very much not leaving my neighborhood at all.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a very weird time, and getting scarier by the day. But we're here to have a good time, and maybe, think about things that aren't too scary, like some of our favorite actors and their good movies, and maybe they're not so good movies.
Absolutely. It's funny too because the fact that you're like, "Oh, I've been outside," but I don't know. I mean, I think most of the people in our audience know that we both live in New York City. We're both Brooklyn people. And so yeah, it's scary here. Hopefully
Very
it's not
scary.
as scary as where you are. And just
Yes.
thank you so much for listening. while
Yeah, thanks
while
for
we
listening.
are stuck here.
Yeah, and I really quickly, I just feel working from home sucks, but I also know that working right now is such a privilege. And
Yes,
so
absolutely.
everyone, I feel your pain, whether you're working hard at home and struggling through it, or you just got laid off. I have a couple friends who just got laid off and struggling
Yeah.
just to like pay for food and stuff. There are resources out there for you. Please find them, and just be safe. And let's have some fun. This beat is sick, but we're not sick. But we are not sick. Okay.
No.
Gavin, let's talk about last episode, huh?
Absolutely. So our last episode was about the indomitable Sally Field, just a true icon.
What a fun episode. Like I don't think I've had that much fun watching for an episode in a long time. I ended up rewatching Soap Dish again after with Derek. It's just, I mean, it's Soap Dish is the perfect quarantine movie for you guys out there. I believe it's on Amazon Prime right now. But anyway,
Maybe we'll do a little Mixed Reviews movie night and we'll invite people and yeah.
Yes. Okay. Let's talk about that. Like maybe at the end. Let's make them get through it. But yes, sneak preview. We might have a Mixed Reviews movie night. Everyone, stay tuned. We asked you guys to go on our Twitter to vote for your favorite Sally Field movie. I think this is the first time ever that one of our picks got 0%. Nary a pick.
I was saying that this morning. I was like, wow, I never seen something that we put on one of the polls get 0%. So that is new record.
Yeah. Not a soul chose Sybil. That came in at 0%. Which, she has a lot of good movies and I think a lot of standout things that people were like really, really passionate about. So Other came in at 13%. And some of those picks were Eye for an Eye, Places in the Heart, Absence of Malice. My friend Maria definitely did pick Homeward Bound, Hallelujah, Justice for Sassy. So those are Other. Me and Gavin's pick, Norma Ray, came in at 30%. And kind of overwhelmingly, Steel Magnolias came in at 57%. Which, fair, valid, amazing movie.
Great, classic.
Amazing performance. We live, we laugh, we love. But enough about Sally. On to this episode. Gavin, do you want to tell our fine folks at home who we're talking about today?
So this week we are talking about legendary star of stage and screen, activist first, and actor Danny Glover. Why
Danny
did we?
Glover.
Yeah, why did we pick Danny Glover? What is the thought process?
I think he was on the brain because of Sally Field, honestly. We talked about him in Places in the Heart, which is the movie that she won her second Oscar for. And I think, I mean, all transparency, I looked at Gavin and I was like, do we need to do a dude? We haven't done a guy in a while. And I think we always have this conversation of like, okay, if we're going to do a man, we want to try and think really hard to at least do a POC. And he was fresh on the brain. And we thought, wow, he definitely has a catalog of movies that would be interesting to get through. We also talked about him previously in our Buddy Cop movies episode for his, I mean, kind of, for better or worse, iconic role in Lethal Weapon, the franchise.
Yeah, as Detective Murtaugh. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's kind of been on the border of a lot of our conversations.
I actually remember back when we started this venture and we were making our lists of people we want to do. That sounds dirty. And we wanted to cover. And I put out Danny Glover knowing that when we eventually did come to him, he would be a challenge. Not necessarily for his political stuff. His political stuff we'll get to, even though I would say on his charts, like his political stuff almost outranks, like there's more knowledge about his politics than there is about some of the roles he's played. But I knew we would have the issue that we sort of ran into when we did Stanley Tucci, and we've started come to refer to this as the Stanley Tucci effect.
The Tucci effect, famously.
Yeah, exactly. Where Danny Glover shows up in a lot of things. He puts his power behind a lot of stuff, but he's not necessarily a main. Sometimes he's not even, sometimes he'll show up in a movie. Like I watched The Rainmaker and he's uncredited.
Right.
And so like
when I realized that he played a judge, I was like, and this movie's not about the judge? No, ma'am, I'm not watching. But like, just to give you guys like a bigger picture of this, in 2010, he had at least 10 projects come out. Same thing in 2016. Absolutely. He has like so many things where he's like, I'll be on set for the weekend and then I'm going.
Yeah. And he's such a world traveler. I was listening to interviews with him where he had just come back from South Africa and then was going to Cuba the next day and was only stopping over in the US to do this interview. Or like he's prolific in many realms besides acting, and he's just such an interesting character. But I knew that like deep down it would be such a challenge to both of us to really talk about like what's important when it comes to Danny Glover and who he is. And I think he's so fascinating and it's such a passionate person.
Right. Such a character for sure. I think we're going to get into it when we talk about his movies. So Gavin, why don't you kick us off into our rewind?
Daniel Lieber Glover was born July 22nd, 1946, which means he is 73 years old. So, not spring chicken,
right?
But been around the block a bit. He was born in San Fran. That's what they call it, right, Louie?
No one fucking calls it San Fran. I will murder.
I just know what buttons to press. So he was born in San Francisco. To his parents, Carrie and James Glover, both of which were postal workers, but they were also active members of the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. I know everybody knows what they are, but it's always nice for like the one person in the audience who doesn't know what the NAACP stands for to know what it means.
Could be 100 people in the room.
Exactly. Just need the one who doesn't know what the NAACP is.
Yeah, and we're here and we got you covered, okay?
Yeah. So his parents were big in working to the advancement of equal rights. He was born with epilepsy. I haven't found a ton about this, and he suffered pretty regular seizures until he was 35.
Wow.
Which, yeah, I had not known about this before we began researching this. It's really fascinating. He attended college at San Francisco State University in the late 60s. He did not graduate from this college, but it is an important part of his story. You know, he talks about his parents a lot, and he talks about growing up and watching the marches and watching his parents celebrate the Cuban Revolution.
So when I'm looking at my mom, as I think about that now, not at 9 years old, but now as I think about those moments where we sat in front of the television as a family and watched people marching, people making demands, people fighting for change, and they're being in a nonviolent way, in a passive way. And then those were the things that influenced my early life.
And just to give you the idea of his political background, but when he attends San Francisco State University, the FSU, he joins the Black Student Union, and along with the Third World Liberation Front and the American Federation of Teachers, he collaborated in a 5-month-long student-led strike in an attempt to establish a Department of Black Studies at the college. And the strike was the longest student walkout in U.S. history. It helped create not only the first Department of Black Studies, but also the first school of ethnic studies in the United States.
It's interesting because he mentions, a lot of people think about Berkeley as like the birthplace or a very important place for civil rights and student activism. But he says, SFSU was a working man's state school. Berkeley was obviously very important, but that's where rich kids and like really elite, super smart people went. And SFSU was, teachers and just a bunch of working people. And so I think a lot of that contributes to his, his political feelings and just really fighting for, the layperson and especially fighting against the man, which we see like until now.
Absolutely. I mean, don't even get him started on U.S. politics.
Don't even get him started.
I will say this, upon looking into his finding interviews and finding clips that I'm going to put in the episode, they'll be littered about the episode. He is such a wonderful speaker, but not a succinct man at all. Mm-mm. His stories are long as they are insightful, but I will try and pare him down as much as I can for the episode purposes. After Glover leaves college, he gets work in the city administration, working on community development. But he sort of starts to transition to theater. He talks about being in college and getting involved in, essentially being told that like they needed Black actors. And, he started to move towards stage stuff there.
I felt that doing this, I could be of some use. Mm-hmm. Baraka came into the BSU office one day and said, I want some of you so-called revolutionary brothers to come be in these plays. I was 20 years old. I had never been on stage in my life. Never been. My mother used to admonish us because she said, why is it all my kids all they do is holding palms and don't have a line, don't have nothing to say. And we saying, well, I'm sure glad that's all I had to do is hold one of those palms in the Easter pageant at church,
His first major theater involvement was the American Conservatory Theater, which was a regional training program in San Francisco. But he also trained under Gene Shelton at the Shelton Actors Lab. And Glover really credited Gene Shelton for much of his development as an actor. And so we've talked about sort of the master actor teachers before, even just more recently in our Sally Field episode. So Gene Shelton was really his mentor, got him into the acting scene the way that he did. And he resigned from his city administration job and then became a stage actor. He moved to Los Angeles, and while he was in Los Angeles, he starts becoming a stage actor. He eventually ends up being in the original 1982 Yale Repertory cast of Master Harold and the Boys, which is a Fugard play. It's set in the 50s in South Africa during apartheid. And yeah, he's in the original cast, and really this play sort of focuses him into the realm of not just being an actor, but being a full-on activist.
I began with Fugard. I'd like to say to people, and I've said it often, that had it not been Fugard and his writing, I perhaps would not have been an actor. Mm-hmm. There's something about the work itself, the way in which he tells the story, the way in which he writes, which are beautiful for actors to work with. I mean, he is certainly 20th century version of some of the great, at least this half of the 20th century, some of the great playwrights in America and in the world. Certainly the values of acting, certainly the values of listening, of making choices, are so ever present in his work. And I get a chance now to say what I've always thought what his plays said. What is this dynamic about being a human being? What is it dynamic about change and struggle that is a part of the human experience?
It's funny, too, because the play transfers to Broadway within the same year, 1982, which is a rare thing to move from Yale Repertory Theater to Broadway. And
Yeah,
so
so
he
fast.
takes... Yeah, absolutely. So he takes that role on Broadway. And it's actually, he starts doing, some movie stuff here and there. He does an episode of BJ and the Bear, but his very first credited film role as inmate in Escape from Alcatraz, the Clint Eastwood film. I did not see this, Louie. I don't know if you saw this. It's not.
No.
Yeah. I didn't think so. He's in a movie called Choo Choo and the Philly Flash. It's not until 1984's Iceman that he's really starting to cross over in the mainstream. I saw Iceman. It's not a huge role, but it is an ensemble role. But unbeknownst to him, there was actually a casting agent in the audience while he was doing Master Harold and the Boys. This deep play, as we mentioned before, that play ran for 344 performances on Broadway.
Wow.
So it was long running, and this casting director saw him and instantly was like, oh, he's my Mose in Places in the Heart. And so he gets cast in his first leading role. Once again, this is like his fourth film. He's done a lot of TV in between. But in 1984, he plays Mose, one of the three leads in Places in the Heart.
It must be close to 40 acres out back. I reckon with the right kind of help, you'd make yourself a handsome living just farming cotton. All you need is somebody like me who knows most everything there is to know about farming cotton. Now, I was thinking that maybe I can work around here for food and a place to stay.
No, I can't give you any work. I could fix you some breakfast and then you got to leave.
Ain't no such thing as a job nowadays, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Now, I'll fix you a nice plate of food. You go and wait out there, I'll bring it to you, okay?
He's like in his 30s already when he does this, right? He started acting late.
For other people as well, a lot of times when you think about actors, you think about them. I feel like most actors nowadays even start earlier, but I find most famous actors start late teens, early 20s.
Oh yeah,
And Danny Glover is not. He's in his 30s already by the time he ends up getting these roles.
That's why you always see him in his movies. It's always like, oh, he's always playing like a dad or like some sort of father figure. And it's weird because I think for like mainstream America, you kind of see Danny, no matter what, when you see him, he's like always playing some kind of like older gentleman person. And so when you see Places in the Heart, I remember me and Derek were like, oh my God, he's so young. Like it's it's truly the youngest thing you can see him in a very like prominent role. But even then he's kind of like, you never see him as like a young man. And
it's interesting too, because it's a year later after Places in the Heart comes out, and he's already like a speeding bullet. He's off. He's in Witness in 1985, Silverado in 1985, and of course, The Color Purple in 1985. Yeah. And I think The Color Purple is a huge boon for his career.
Yeah, I mean, I would even argue like doing Silverado, like, yeah, these are all. I mean, so Silverado especially, that is a movie that they probably wrote for like one black person. There is one black person in this movie, and they cast Danny Glover. Like, it is different. The Color Purple, it's a black cast, but like he's arguably like he's like the male lead in it.
Yeah. For as awful and nasty as the character of Mister is, he's one of the most memorable things about it because he is one of the only men in the film.
Yeah, I mean, I never seen Silverado. I enjoyed it a lot. I think he's good in it. I kind of like the chemistry with him and the other guys. It's like a fun Western.
Yeah, I had a good time. I watched Silverado for this as well for the first time. I had no idea it was Lawrence Kasdan. It's very much a Lawrence Kasdan film.
The music also is incredible.
Oh, yeah. And that's one of the things that's really remembered about it is the score. But Lawrence Kasdan, we've talked about before because he does eventually go on to make a movie called Grand Canyon with Danny Glover, which is not good, but is one of the many films that Danny Glover...
It's the original Crash.
Yeah, it's the original Crash, exactly. It's one of the many films Danny Glover ends up doing with Alfre Woodard. So you'll see her many times along in his career as well. But former subject Alfre Woodard, I should say.
Yes.
But what's interesting about Silverado is it's very old time. Like it was like watching a Western as if the like 70s revisionist Westerns had never happened. Like the Clint Eastwood films had sort of never happened, but with better politics, obviously. But it was like the sort of John Wayne, like Saturday matinee. And I love the fact that Lawrence Kasdan, when he's not writing about social issues like Grand Canyon, when he's doing his like Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Silverado stuff, is so much fun and like it genuinely harkens back to an era, like a much more innocent era.
Oh yeah, the movie is you always feel like the movie is rooting for the right people. Like, you know that in the end, like, you're going on this great adventure and like justice will prevail. You know, like there will be comeuppance for bad guys, but it just feels nice, you know, like it doesn't feel like it needs to like trick you or anything.
Where's Jake? The Kendricks man got him. Is he alive? It's worse than that, Emmett. They took him at your sister's house. Her husband was shot. I don't know if he's gonna make it. Kate? She was hurt. Pretty bad. Emmett. Took the little boy with him.
So coming from that, where he's not the lead, he's part of this big cast, and it's only tangentially about like there obviously is a moment where, you know, in Silverado, his father and him, you know, because they are black, have injustice against them, but it's only a little bit of part of that movie. The Color Purple is specifically about these black people, and there's so much trauma and pain in this movie. It's you know, it was the moment. It was that girl, you know, like how many Oscar nominations you get? Like 11.
Yeah.
I will say that I think the movie is more about the women. I think Oprah and Whoopi are like phenomenal.
And we have definitely talked a lot about The Color Purple in our Whoopi Goldberg episode, which is one of our earliest episodes, but I would still recommend going back and maybe giving a listen to it because she is also such a luminary and an icon.
Yeah, I mean, all that to say that like The Color Purple for me is the moment where, or the first instance of you see him tackling these big, like iconic American black roles that you will see over and over again in his career. And I think, you know, he, looking at like the American pantheon of actors, like he holds a very like special, specific place because he's like, I'm gonna fucking tackle these roles that mean something and have something to say about the black experience. And it's like from like slavery to like modern day shit. He's like going to talk about injustice against black people. He doesn't give a fuck.
He ain't worth it. He ain't worth it.
Who you think you is? You can't cuss nobody. Look at you. You're black, you're poor, you're ugly, you're a woman, you're nothing at all.
Till you do right by me, everything you even think about gonna fail.
It's been a pleasure meeting all of you.
2 years after he did The Color Purple, his big, I mean, he's already at this point basically a household name, and he gets his big like action break, which is Lethal Weapon.
It's funny because I think like when he is not doing like socially minded work, I feel like his baseline is very everyman, and I think he does it very well. Seeing him in Lethal Weapon being the kind of straight guy to good old what's his face's antics, I think he's such a like I see him as the most quintessential American like family man, you know.
Yeah.
And he does it so well. Like I believe it like every time.
Well, it's funny too because he's also talked about that, you know, at the time, the impact of something like as much of a monster as he is now, and what we didn't know back then, Cosby, you know, and so
Yeah.
this role was written as, you know, he's like a good dad. Like that's one of his things in Lethal Weapon is he's like the good guy. He's there to match against Mel Gibson's craziness and
Mel Gibson's cocaine use.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he's this good family man, you know, a guy ready for retirement, and you know he's too old for this shit and whatnot.
Who plays his wife? It's the singer Love.
Darlene Love? Is it
Yes.
Darlene Love?
Yes, it is. It absolutely
I had
is.
completely. Yeah, it is. Oh my god.
Yeah, I love seeing her and everyone. I'm like, girl, yes, you got the job and you kept the job, honey.
I've seen all 4 of those movies for our Buddy Cop episode and did not realize that was Darlene Love. Good for her.
Hello.
Good for her. But yeah, so it really like it also cements him sort of in this, in a weird way, in sort of this action movie phase. You know,
Oh, yeah.
Witness is where he plays the villain in Witness is not an action movie, but when you look at the way that looks and then you move on to something like Silverado and then you move on to something like Lethal Weapon, suddenly he's like, it's like normal to see Danny Glover with a gun in his hand.
Right.
It's like, you know.
Yeah, you believe that he can like kick anyone's ass, even though you're like, this is suspicious.
Absolutely. He does, you know, Bat 21 next, and then he does the Lonesome Dove TV miniseries, which I mean, there's like a billion Lonesome Doves. I just avoided them. I don't know if you delved into that.
No.
You know, but each of these is an important step in his career because it's really, you know, moving him up, giving him money so he can
Yes.
put his activism into work as well. And 89, he does Lethal Weapon 2, which I talked about on the Buddy Cop episode.
It is wild. It is only because I was like researching him now. When I was watching the movie, I was like, oh my God, the late 80s, they love, like South Africa was the like version of what Russia and China would become as far as like villainy goes.
Yeah.
And like the villainy of Lethal Weapon 2 is all about how these South Africans who have these crazy funny accents and they just fucking hate black people, period. And then reading about his activism, I was like, holy fuck, he was like at the forefront of fighting against the apartheid.
And it's funny because you're going to see this again and again and again. And it's, I think the closest we come, and I feel bad that I keep referencing past episodes, but really, if you've been listening since the beginning, I feel like we're building sort of a weird canon of information. But really, it's sort of like Jane Fonda in the late 60s when she suddenly starts putting her money where her mouth is in terms of politics. And she decides to make her career in the 70s and the 80s and early 90s before she retires from acting all about her political beliefs. And really, even in the things that you don't necessarily think are political, he's finding avenues to play with them. You know, that, like I said, he talks about Cosby sort of remodeling the way people saw black people as father figures. There's that. You mentioned South Africa stuff. Lethal Weapon 2 comes out in 89, but the next thing he does is he produces and stars in this very small independent film called To Sleep with Anger in 1990. It's a Charles Burnett film. He is the antagonist in it. It's a film about a family. An old friend of theirs comes to stay with them from California, and he is maybe an evil spirit. He is maybe
I was
the
gonna say, like,
devil
y'all ever
himself.
heard of magical realism? I don't know.
Yeah, it is, and it's an interesting movie because it is. There was a review written in February 12th of 2019 that is entitled "To Sleep with Anger is the greatest Black American film ever." It's from thestranger.com. And this author, Charles Mudidi, argues that it is in fact the greatest Black American film because it is a film about Black people where they never feel themselves to be Black. And it's like, you know, when you watch white movies, like, and the examples he gives is A Star is Born, Vice, The Favorite, the white people never feel themselves to be white. You know, they're in a drama, and if you look at all Black films, especially, and he uses the example of 2019 and the previous year, like Black Panther is about Black superheroes, and Green Book is about a Black pianist, and Black Klansman is about a Black detective, and how that weighs on the consciousness. And To Sleep with Anger is about people. And I thought that was a really interesting, I had seen it before, but I rewatched it for this, a really interesting avenue for me to think about going into it, because it really is. So it's really the story about these people and a clash between toxic reality and the reality they built for themselves, a clash between the old ways and the new ways, a clash between religion and maybe some not, you know, some, like you said, magical realism.
Right. I also think the movie is very about like awful masculinity, and I might be out of my lane in saying this, but like Black masculinity. And I think that happens to a lot of POC, certainly in my experience, like Latino male households, where it's like you have to be the macho guy. And I think the character, especially of him butting up against that woman who is like, I am not the woman I used to be. I've found God. She is a badass woman. I can't remember her character or her name, but she says, I'm not going to sing because you want me to sing. I'm going to sing when I want to. And I know exactly who you are. I know exactly what you're trying to do, and I'm not the one. And
right. She can see through him always throughout the entire film.
Let's get Hattie to sing a song from the old days. She used to keep them Juke Jordans steaming. Right. All right.
Harry always tries to be the kingfish. I told him I'm a different person now. I'm saved.
It's funny, the first time I ever heard of this movie was we have this great monthly, or had when we could go outside, a great monthly film series at the IFC Center. And it's about queer cinema. It's held on Mondays. And the first time I ever heard about this movie was in 2015. A Black queer artist had them play it as their selection. Wow, and they talked about like the queer readings of the movie as well, the outsiderness, and yeah,
I think when I was watching it, I was like, there's this thing about, you know, obviously religion as salvation, but a lot of it is also just like in of that is like rejecting the way things have been and the awful like patriarchal way things have been, and just like being good and like loving yourself, which I think is a very queer thing to do, you know, not trying to look for acceptance outwardly, but inwardly. So yeah, it's funny because when I watched it, I was like, oh my God, I do not like Danny Glover being like scary dude. I do not like it. It's so uncomfortable, but it's effective.
Yeah. I love that he took a chance on this small film, and listen, it didn't make a huge impact when it came out. It fell on the mostly white reviewers' deaf ears. In fact, I believe I read one review where they flat out said it was overrated, and I was like, this is a new movie.
How dare?
Like, how dare you? Yeah,
you can overrate something that just came out, honey.
But he did take his chance, and from there, he starts going back to doing Hollywood movies. He does Predator 2, which I think is kind of a miscast, but okay.
The only thing I'll say about Predator 2 is that when I was watching it, I was like, is this movie actually secretly subversive? Because in a world like this is 1990 when Hillary Clinton and co were calling black people super predators. Like, but Predator is an actual predator, you know, like
Right.
the movie is ridiculous. Like, I'm not trying to say it's a good cinema or art at all, but I think it's a good, like, black people and like people of color are not like actual fucking predators, you know, like,
Right.
relax.
I also think that's a testament to what happens when you start thinking about Danny Glover and how Danny Glover would like you to see his career, is that even in the roles that he probably took for money, you know, and in that movie he's a hero, but you're right, like there is some subversive quality to it. You know, you get this sort of like underlying political message. He goes on to play kind of a secondary villain in the movie A Rage in Harlem, which I watched and it was fun. It's weird because it was written as a comedy and it wasn't made as a comedy. But there's some pretty funny moments. I mean, he plays a gangster who's like in love with his Pomeranian, and that part's pretty great.
Same.
But there's also a drag queen in that movie. I don't know, a big Kathy, and I was like, that's. I was like, that's a lot for 91. I was like, good for you, 91.
Did you watch Pure Luck?
I did watch Pure Luck. Pure Luck is also 91. Once again, we mentioned he works.
Pure Luck with Martin Short, right?
Yes, correct. I had seen Pure Luck many times as a child. I had never watched it. Oh, really? Oh,
I saw it the first time, and I was like, comedy.
I will admit, this scene where Martin Short gets stung by a bee still makes me laugh.
Really?
Yeah, that's the one though. That's the one.
I might have chuckled a couple times. This movie's a try hard if I ever saw it. Okay.
I also forgot that movie doesn't really end.
No.
It does not.
It tries to end like 10 times and then doesn't, and then it's over.
We mentioned Grand Canyon, which comes along in 1991. Lethal Weapon 3, 92, because they were just pumping those lethal weapons out.
Yeah.
But in 93, I feel like it was sort of a turn back towards his political films. I don't know if you saw the film The Saint of Fort Washington.
I sure did, honey.
I liked it. I don't know how you felt about it. I don't know if
this
we'll
is
talk
with
about
Matt
it
Dillon, right?
Yeah, with Matt Dillon. They're both homeless men. He plays Jerry. He sort of adopts Matt Dillon. Matt Dillon is a homeless,
I believe.
Yeah, Matthew, who is suffering from schizophrenia, and he is he doesn't really know how to be a homeless person, and Danny Glover's whole goal is to open a fruit stand. And I don't know. I really fell in love with these characters. I really liked the message of the film. You know, I thought there was a quiet dignity to the way that they portrayed homelessness in the early 90s, and the indignities of the way that people treat them, the indignities in which, you know, the fighting amongst each other. And yeah, I don't know. I thought it was an interesting movie. I'd never seen it before.
Leave me alone, little Leroy.
Who the fuck said that?
It's Jerry.
It's none of your business, old man.
Anything reaches my ears or touches my eyes is my business, Leroy. Man entitled to give away his goods if man wants to.
Now, he nothing to you. What you butting in for?
He's something to me. Your relative.
The fuck you mean here, relative? You full of shit.
My son.
He white.
You talking skin tone?
You motherfucking right I'm talking skin tone. What the fuck you think I'm talking?
Skin tone means shit, little Leroy.
He blacker than you, matter of fact.
It's my son. Name's Matthew. Come on, Matthew. We gotta go now. You've seen enough TV.
Okay.
It definitely, I don't think there are a lot of movies like it. And I agree that they give a lot of, I don't know, it's hard because there are certainly a lot of homeless characters in the movie who they do give a lot of dignity to, but then there's also a lot of characters. What's the villain's name? The actor.
The actor's Ving Rhames.
Ving Rhames.
Yeah.
Like his character, they also have, I mean, they have to show like there are horrors of being homeless and not just of like living on the streets, but it's like dealing with other homeless people who maybe are not as kind or, you know, whatever. It's a tough movie. It's not a fun movie to watch by any means.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a good like palate cleanser. I think though for Danny Glover after so many like Lethal Weapons and Predator and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. In 93, he also does Bopa, which is Morgan Freeman directed film about apartheid in South Africa. He plays a cop. His son is a protester. His wife is played by Alfred Woodard. This was the third collaboration. I don't think I mentioned the previous collaboration, the second one, which was Mandela, a 1987 TV movie where he played Nelson Mandela and she played his wife. She also plays his wife here.
Is she not
Sorry,
in
that's
Grand
the first
Canyon?
collaboration. Second. No, she is in Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon was the second collaboration.
Right.
Bopa's the third collaboration. Bopa's good, and I'm a little shocked. I know there's been stuff about Morgan Freeman that has come out that has made him seem a little less savory than we once thought he was, but barring that, I had no idea he was that talented behind the camera. You know, the movie was a critical hit, but a financial disaster.
Come along now. I want you and your mother to go stay with your uncle in Lanka.
So what do I do, Bob? Go and tell my people my barber says I should run and hide now?
Don't start playing Mr. Hero with me, Zoiraki. You must leave here. These are not bloody school games you're playing.
They never were.
I can't protect you anymore.
I never asked you to.
It's a good movie, and I recommend, especially. I don't know how great his accent work is, but I'm always a little leery when it comes to South African accents. But
it's a hard one.
It's a hard one, but I enjoyed it.
Oh, you know what I did see in 1994 though?
What's that?
Me and about 10 million other children watched Angels in America. I mean, Angels in the Outfield, Angels in America. Oh my god, I'm gay. Hello.
Do I'm gonna leave that in. Yes,
Children
I
were
did.
clamoring for Angels in America.
They were.
No, the classic Disney movie Angels in the Outfield, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, a very grumpy Danny Glover, and just truly a cast full of like a who's who of rising talent. Matthew McConaughey, Adrian Brody. It's full chock-a-block of characters.
And I mean, I rewatched it, and I gotta say, first of all, Joseph Gordon-Levitt brings it to the. I was like, damn, he is good.
Brings it to you every ball.
Yeah, absolutely. Why are you gagging so? But that movie is wild.
It is
wild. First of all, the angels are crazy looking. Christopher Lloyd is like. Christopher Lloyd should not be around children. I'm not saying he's a danger to them, but I feel like at any moment he could be.
I mean, he is the page master, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the angels look really fucking cool. I think maybe that's what, like, I don't know, as a kid being like, oh, that's what an angel looks like. A fucking crazy, ethereal, very sporty, hot person.
And, you know, like, spoiler alert, literally 10 minutes before the end of the movie, Christopher Lloyd tells Joseph Gordon-Levitt that his favorite baseball player is gonna fucking die. He's gonna bite it in 6 months, nonchalantly.
Wait,
he's just like,
who's the actor?
It's Tony Danza.
Tony Danza.
and Christopher Lloyd's literally like, well, he smoked. You shouldn't do that.
He smoked all his life. He's gonna pitch this and win, but then he's gonna die. I was like, wow,
so fucking good.
This movie is a roller coaster though, because it's like a high of like, I mean, the high of the Joseph Gordon-Levitt coming out doing the angel flap and everyone's flapping their wings and like, oh my god, it's gonna be great. And then like, oh, but he's gonna die, and then it's down, and then back up again when Danny Glover, after like a season of baseball, is like, I'm adopting these children. Like, what?
Yes, well, that's it. I was gonna say, we're here to talk about Danny Glover. As you mentioned, Danny Glover, grumpiest of grumps alive. Yet some reason at the end of the movie is just like, I'm literally going to own you for the rest of your life, child.
Yeah,
like,
he's like,
we had fun these last 3 months when you sat in the stands and I occasionally came to talk to you, but now I'm your dad.
Yeah.
Like,
Also, the woman who's like playing their foster mother is
Maggie.
Yeah, she absolutely is the pigeon woman from Home Alone.
My friend Kim told me that recently, and I had no idea, and I was like, holy shit. So,
as soon as I clocked her, I was like, she had a type, and it was a loving mother figure. But not quite.
Roger, the person who called social service, that was me. I want to try to be a dad. I want you to come and live at my house.
I can't. I can't leave JP.
I can never leave JP. He's coming too.
I don't want to spend too much time in it because I feel like we're talking about every movie in detail.
True,
but I do want to mention in 1994, he and Ben Gilroy founded the Roby Theater Company in Los Angeles, which focused on theaters by and about Black people, which is a huge thing.
Yes, Queen.
I believe it is still there to this day. So good on them. I hope their mission continues. They've garnered so many awards over the years, and it's amazing that he co-founded that.
We wanted to do theater that in some sense encapsulates and develops material that expresses the Black experience. The possibility of engaging children and everything else, and you bring them to watching live theater, and first of all, they're awed by it.
And also, I forgot to mention, by the way, his big Independent Spirit Award win for To Sleep with Anger. Which was maybe it wasn't super acknowledged by the mainstream, but that was sort of the acknowledgement that film needed.
Totally.
He goes on for the rest of the 90s, doing
steady work.
He's in The Rainmaker, uncredited. I still don't know why. Lethal Weapon 4 in 1998. Ants in 1998, which we mentioned in our DreamWorks animation episode. I do want to pull the brakes real quick and talk about another film that came out in 1998, which is Beloved.
Oh, it's not The Prince of Egypt?
No. Though he is Jethro in that. Because,
No, yeah, we have to talk about Beloved, though. Toni Morrison wrote Beloved, and it's one of the great American novels of all time.
Absolutely. It's a novel that many people thought was completely unadaptable. Oprah Winfrey read it, and she said she couldn't imagine it being made without her and Danny Glover.
Yeah,
she could just see.
She snatched those rights before it was even published, I think. She got the rights early.
Yeah. And it's I understand why it was thought as unadaptable. It's a hard film. It's a film, on paper, it's a film about a woman who's haunted by the ghosts of the daughter that she killed rather than have her be re-enslaved while she was trying to escape slavery. Off paper, it's a film about racism. It's a film about rage. It's a film about denial, and past sins, and trauma. So much trauma, shared trauma.
Yeah,
it's a hard film. It is not by any means an easy film or an easy story, and I get why people might have thought it would be unadaptable. She gets Jonathan Demme involved. He is white, but that's okay because he's awesome. But he is also, Academy Award-winning director. So, and I think he brings a real, as artsy as you can get in the mainstream quality to it. He brings some of the stuff that he brings to all his films. He brings the direct address,
it
the
feels
angles.
Very haunted. The angles are crazy. I remember I had not watched this movie before. Had you watched this before?
I actually had seen most of it. I don't think I'd ever seen the full thing. No. So this was my first time.
Yeah, I never seen it. I've never read Beloved. I did not know what this movie is about. I only knew about it in the way that it's kind of like a punchline, It was a very big Oscar-y, buzzy movie. It kind of fell flat on its face. It was kind of a commercial disaster. I mean, it made money, but not as much as, The Color Purple.
Exactly. And that's sort of the crazy thing is it made money. It's one of those things where I often go back to Waterworld where, people think of Waterworld as this huge disaster because it didn't make its money back right away, but Waterworld was also #1 for the first 2 weeks that it was out. So like, it's hard to be like, this movie is a disaster when it's so successful, but you're right. It was not thought of as a success. It was pulled from theaters. Jonathan Demme, I believe, was quoted as saying, Disney pulled it from theaters so they could put Waterboy into more theaters.
Which I think is kind of suspect and not maybe very truthful.
But they did pull it from theaters quick because they were going to try and do an awards push, and it did, like you said, it didn't succeed in its awards push.
Right. I think like because Oprah was involved, because it is a story about, historical Black significance, it is automatically going to be compared to The Color Purple, and in that sense, it did not rise to that level. I think Beloved is a very hard watch. I think, it's a very different movie. I mean, Steven Spielberg is like a very classic American filmmaker.
Yeah.
And so it's an easier, even though it's very traumatic and hard to get through, like The Color Purple has a lot more emotional satisfaction. Beloved does not have, a lot of catharsis in it.
That's a really good way to put it. It's a really fascinating film.
I watched it and I was like, I need to stop, pause, collect myself, because from the get-go, there is some awful, horrible imagery. And I'm not just talking about like the depiction of slavery, which I've already talked about in previous episodes, but like to animals, and it's just ugh. But all that being said, it showcases truly like what Oprah is able to do as an actress. I think the performance of her daughter Denver is genius. Such a good actress.
Yes. That actress is like insane and brilliant. And I wish, had it Beloved not been considered such a disaster, I think we would see her everywhere.
Kimberly Elise is her name, and she gives the standout performance of the movie. And in the face of all this like craziness, because it's not the movie. Yes, is about slavery and trauma and pain, but there is a lot of like really elevated reality things that just feel very otherworldly. And she is so grounded, though. She is like this force of just like, this woman who is trying to break the cycle, and she fucking kills it. Kimberly Elise, she's the bomb. She's the best in that movie.
But I want to move on from that and just move on further. You get into the 2000s, and I think what he's most known for in the early 2000s is 2001. He does the Royal Tenenbaums, where he plays Henry Sherman.
Yep.
And it's a very funny performance. And then he really takes a chance and puts money into this small independent horror movie called Saw.
A little something you've never maybe heard of. Independent film.
And it's funny because it was an independent film at the time. And it's funny because I've listened to interviews about it, and he's like, yeah, I've never seen it. And they're like, what? and he's like, yeah, I don't do horror movies.
I haven't seen Saw, but I because I don't. Horror films scare me. Watching them scare me. They always. I'll make them, but I don't watch them. Listen, no. But on the one hand, it was behind the idea that the writer, a young 22-year-old Asian from Australia, had around it, and I bought into it. I bought into the violence in it and everything else. So I was able to find my world. So the combination, the character is not any specific character that I'd done before, and any other particular relationship that I'd had with the narrative within the story in itself. But this was new to me, so it was challenging to me in a sense.
I'm with you. I feel you. I've seen Saw. I've seen a lot of the Saws. I did not rewatch. I was like, I'm not gonna put myself through it. No.
Yep. He also does, and I just want to put a small shout out. In 2003, he does a TV movie for Showtime called Good Fences, where he plays Whoopi Goldberg's husband.
Thank you, Gavin.
Good, because I really liked this movie, and I thought they were both incredibly great in it. And it's Ernest R. Dickerson is the director, and he is
He's like the cinematographer of Spike Lee, isn't he?
Yeah, I was going to say he's a Spike Lee acolyte, and you see a lot of that in this movie. It's very stylish, and which is not to say that Ernest R. Dickerson doesn't have his own style, but you always see that when you see somebody who starts with some, you know, when you look at Barry Sonnenfeld's early work, you like see the Coen brothers. Like that's how it works. But I would highly recommend watching this movie. It's for free on Amazon Prime, and it's good and it's interesting, and it's about racial politics in the 70s. And
yeah, it's good. I will say that I don't think it lands everything it wants to. No, but it is very interesting. I think Whoopi's very good. Monique, very good.
Monique, so very good. The score is terrible. The score is maybe one of the worst scores. Yeah, literally,
Gavin.
like please, fire, like retroactively fire that person. Whatever you paid him, steal it from him. But yeah,
it's funny. I was watching it. There is a moment where the young son has like this sexual fantasy come true with his like best friend's mom, who is like this Asian woman, and I was like, huh. We're trying to break down all these racial things, and yet the one Asian woman in this movie becomes a sexual conquest. Well.
Yeah. I just
want to say this movie is it has some flaws, but it is very interesting, and I think he's very good in it.
How many of them dropped by?
How'd you know?
One of us on their block, fine. Two of us, maybe. But three is the apocalypse. Everything we've worked for, every step we've taken has led us to this very moment in time. Now it's up to us to choose sides.
I don't really see what we can do about it, Tom.
I'm sorry, but this time it's not we, baby. It's you.
What?
Though I've spent my whole life getting us to the goal line, it turns out that you're the one who's going to win the game for us.
What are you talking about?
Just stroll over there, find out how she's doing, then tell her nobody pays cash for a house no matter how much they have.
So as you move further into the 2000s, you know, he takes a reoccurring role on ER as Charlie Pratt Sr., much like our previous subject. He's playing Sally Field, playing the father, one of the main characters. And I think like what I'm really starting to get to in the 2000s is this is starting to become, I think, the Danny Glover that we more know nowadays. Like there's no more Lethal Weapon franchise, really. You know, no. Richard Donner apparently still wants to make a 5. I don't know why.
Psycho.
Yeah, but you start to get the I do one for them and then I do a bunch for me. And
bunch.
And the thing is like a lot of these are still black focused or politically motivated films because he does do Dreamgirls, but then he does, a bunch of smaller films, or he does something like Shooter, which is like very much a Hollywood sort of action movie, but has like a political message about how like the entire political system is corrupt and everything. And it's not a great movie, but you see why he did it. He does Honey Dripper for John Sayles. I
saw Honey Dripper.
John Sayles is the director of Passion Fish. So we brought him up before. Be Kind Rewind for Michel Gondry in 2008. He does the TV series Brothers and Sisters. Yes. He plays the recurring role of Isaac Marshall. I don't know if I didn't watch that show, so I don't know much about.
I watched every episode, but I do not remember.
Excellent. I thought you might. That's the only reason.
It was my drunken days as an undergraduate at a women's university, so who knows what happened.
The only reason I brought it up is because I thought you might remember. But he does Blindness, which is a movie I hate, and we've talked about it twice before.
We've talked. We will never be rid of this movie.
No, literally not. Blindness will haunt us till the end of days. And then it really starts to become, he starts doing low budget things. He does Night Train. He becomes an executive producer on this small film called The Jeremiah Bridge, which is the first African-American directed film to ever be shot in Japan. He does 2012, the Roland Emmerich disaster movie where he gets to play the president. I think that's the only reason he did that movie. Also, he plays Tandy Newton's father, and I was really
Crazy.
I was really disturbed because I had just watched Beloved and she had fucking raped him, and I was like, oh no.
When you realize that the child in Beloved is Tandy Newton, you're like, ah!
Yes,
it's
she
almost
is.
too much.
By the way, sidebar, so good in Beloved, and I think she's honestly I think she's sort of a butt of a joke for that role because she plays essentially what is a malevolent. Yeah, she plays a malevolent spirit disguised as a mentally challenged person.
Yes,
but
like we said, hard movie. Just real quick on 2012, I watched it. It's fucking 2.5 hours long. I wish I could get those hours back. And also, Roland Emmerich is such an awful, his films are filled with people that you hate, just so that when they die horribly, and which they will die horribly, you don't feel bad. And nothing is more manipulative than that, and I hate it. She got you, girl. She got you.
She got me.
I said, no, ma'am. No, thank you.
He does the unnecessary American remake of Death at a Funeral at 2010.
Yes.
And literally from there, it's 5 to 6 movies a year. And
it is the Nicolas Cage of Black America.
He kind of has become that. But like I said, a lot of these movies come with, a message or something political that he wants to talk about. You take a movie like The Children's Republic, which I'm sure is a movie that would never be made here. It's by Flora Gomez. He's an African filmmaker. It's a movie about child soldiers. It's on Amazon Prime for free. I think it's on a lot of other, it's on Tubi for free. The thing about a lot of these movies that I've come to reconcile with myself is, there's nothing more boring that a film critic can tell you than, whether you should watch a film or not. There should be more context to what they're doing than just simply being like, I didn't like this, you shouldn't see it. I think a lot of these films are not necessarily what you would consider well made. And I think on the surface level, you can look at them and be like, people shouldn't see this because it's perhaps not the best film that's ever been made. It's not as polished. On the other hand, it's funny because we talked about Kathy Bates directing a Lifetime movie. That is different. That was always going to be made no matter what. These are films that probably wouldn't get made without Danny Glover's involvement. He's probably the big draw of the movie, and he's really throwing his weight behind them. I don't know, and I really respect that in a lot of ways. And a lot of ways that when I watched The Children's Republic, which like I said is maybe just a little over an hour. When I watched Children's Republic, was I like, wow, this was the best constructed film I've ever seen, or the most original film? No on either account. But it was an important message, and I totally see why he did it. It's a film about child soldiers in Africa who, through a magical realism loophole, have founded their own society because adults don't see them anymore. And so they're running their own government in a small African town, and he's the only adult that they can see, and he sort of acts as their advisor.
I think in this business, there are two things that happen. The business is going to give you and present to you an opportunity for a few of us of the things they want you to do or the things that they have available for you to do. The question is always, what do you want to do? What are the things that you want to do? And I tell people, I'm not an actor if it had not been at the Awful Guard and the plays that I did. This is what I want to do. I'm not going to always get a chance to do what I want to do in front of a camera, but I can facilitate the things that I wanted to do behind the camera or as a producer, whether it's films and the idea. I've always wanted to do films in Africa.
you see a lot of that happening through. I mean, you still see some stuff that maybe doesn't have that message. You see things like Badass 2 and Badass 3, or like Dirty Grandpa in 2016.
Badass 2. Ugh.
I was not gonna watch any of them. I can't bring myself to do it.
I was very choosy about like his later stuff, but I watched one of the Badass movies. I watched Waffle Street.
I watched Waffle Street, which once again, like, I got what the message like, was, like, kind of an anti-capitalist message, but it looked like it was made as a an industrial safety video. Like, it had all the filmmaking of that.
All I can say about Waffle Street is that I'm very glad that the hot guy from One Tree Hill is working.
Which is so funny, because I kept, like, I never watched One Tree Hill. My point of reference was the woman who played his wife, as I was like,
yes,
I was like, oh, that was one of the pretty girls from the revival of Dallas.
Yes, I bitch, if you don't think I looked her up, okay, she is a Latina woman, okay.
Yeah,
I was like,
She's
I've
great.
seen her in lots of Spanish-speaking films. Anyways, all that to say, he definitely is. I mean, I don't know. Is he just making money to, like, you know? Because to this day, he is being super political. Like, during this time,
right.
He is out there fighting for, like, you know, the nation of Haiti. He is out there, you know,
right.
talking shit about Barack Obama. He is, you know, fighting for Bernie Sanders. He is just doing a lot of things.
And I'm gonna wrap that up in a moment. But I do just want to cover the last bit of his films. It's only it's only within the last, like, 2 or 3 years he's decided to start doing bigger films again. And, you know, he does roles in things like Sorry to Bother You, which is still kind of a smaller film but plays to a larger audience.
Sorry to Bother You is still very political, also very Bay Area.
Yeah, absolutely. Old Man and the Gun with Robert Redford, which is also political and in a way, shape, or form. Last Black Man in San Francisco he did last year. The Dead Don't Die, which is awful, but and Jumanji: The Next Level was maybe the last, like, big movie he did. But, like, there was that one's purely money driven. I think.
Money.
But enjoyable. I ended up having to watch the first one because I had not seen of the first of the new Jumanji movies, and I was like, I'm already lost. So
please.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's sort of where he's at in his career now. And like we mentioned before, you know, he does stuff sort of in his political career, and that's sort of what drives him. But I do want to mention, because we are talking about his political stuff, well, real quick, on a personal note, he married Asake Bomani in 1975, and they have a daughter named Mandisa, who was born in 76. Him and Bomani divorced in 2000, and he married Elaine Cavaliero, I might be pronouncing that wrong, in 2009. But in terms of activism, we mentioned the walkout. He's been a huge supporter of unions. You know, he supports the United Farm Workers, Unite Here. He's also supporting unions overseas. At the 2010 Academy Awards, he tried to lead a boycott to get people not to wear Hugo Boss suits. When Hugo Boss decided to close a manufacturing plant in Ohio after a proposed pay decrease from $13 to $8.30, which was rejected by the Workers United Union there. So he is very much on their side. He's been arrested for his political beliefs before. He very outspoken against George W. Bush. He was supporter of Prop 7 in California, which is not Prop 8. Don't get it twisted.
Please.
As you mentioned, he's called out Obama he's an equal opportunity. You know, he didn't think Obama was left enough. He is a supporter of Bernie Sanders, as you mentioned. International, I mean, as I've said, there's more stuff about his political activism online than there is about his movies.
Right. I was just to say, there's a lot about his politics that I think you mentioned. There's a lot written about him. He's very outspoken about his politics. He, you know, it has in the past been kind of friendly to Hugo Chavez, who is the dictator of Venezuela. he has said, that he, in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different places, he has very controversial beliefs. I'm trying to be very vague because I just don't know enough about all of it.
No, and I think that's the way to be as well too, because like I've listened to so many interviews of him and I've read so much stuff, and I still don't fully know either necessarily what to say. And I did worry about this because it is a bit of a political minefield, but
Right.
I think he does. I think for a certain facet of people growing up in the time that he grew up, especially being a black person, he decided to study the politics of the world. I do think he is, for the most part, a very educated man when it comes to the politics of other countries. He sort of made himself a student of the world in a way that, like, we were both born in the United States and we have our own ethnocentric biases.
Yep.
And I think he has freed himself of a lot of that, for better or worse. So he has a very different perspective on, what is politically relevant and what maybe isn't.
Right. And I mean, like, he's even like taken money from Hugo Chavez to try and make a movie before.
I did want to bring that up real quick, and I do think it's an important thing to mention, but I also don't want to speculate because neither of us fully knows the truth. But yes,
Right.
he, according to sources, he was supposed to start shooting in Poland in 2007. Hugo Chavez contributed 18 million, supposedly, to this film.
A film about like an uprising in Haiti. So it's not like a random movie. It's a politically minded, focused movie about people uprising in Haiti
called Toussaint.
Yeah, right. To overthrow, the man. And so it's all in purpose of, again, this idea that Danny Glover is so passionate about, and it's about, unionizing power to the people.
And supposedly in 2008, the Venezuelan National Assembly also authorized almost 10 million more. Apparently this really annoyed a lot of Venezuelan filmmakers because the money was going from them to this movie that wasn't even about Venezuela. Danny Glover has said, in fact, recently, nonetheless, he did not see a dime of this money. And it is, none of this money went to him. He did not steal money from the people of Venezuela. I don't know what to think about that. I can only go on what, has been reported, and
right.
The film still hasn't been made.
Comes back to like, he's a very passionate. Right. And I think I read the last thing about him was just that like he still wants this movie to be made. Who knows if and when it will be made. I am sure that there were even like reports that like Angela Bassett and like he had people connected to this this film, but it is kind of a minefield. He is very ready to talk, ready to throw shit down about his politics and his beliefs. And I was funny because I was thinking, I was like, have we covered someone as politically minded and focused as he is? And so it's really funny when you mentioned Jane Fonda. I was like, that's maybe the only other person whose career
absolutely
is a little bit overshadowed by their political work, because he is just the most outspoken.
I tell people, when I first heard about the Cuban Revolution, it was 1959, because my mother's and father's union was celebrating the victory of the victory of the Cuban Revolution. And every moment that I wanted to find out more about it. What was it about? What was that? Or when I first picked up an album at 19 years old by Miriam Makeba, and Carrie Belafonte says this so beautifully. He says, Paul Robeson once told him, get them to sing your song and they're going to want to know who you are. I wanted to know who they were. When we invited Hugh Masekela in 1970 on campus after he had his first album, we invited him on campus. The more and more, all those are the conditions which are the life condition. It's not often being an actor, but often the other things that you're born in, I mean, all this stuff.
And that's the thing, is once you enter the field of politics, you're always going to make enemies. And a lot of, very famously, Hanoi Jane and So you
Yes.
always make enemies that will slander you for your political beliefs. And I think the most important thing to take away, because there's so much stuff, and like, you know, Black AIDS Institute, the Jazz Foundation of America, he's everywhere. He has a Medal of Friendship from Cuba. So like, he's been everywhere, and he's gotten all these awards, and he speaks out, and his whole thing is about continuing to protest, continuing to try and make life better. But it's always going to be difficult to talk about because you're always going to find someone who disagrees with you, regardless of, yeah.
Listen, like, I think, you know, it's the whole Bernie Sanders thing of like, yeah, Cuba has really great, you know, healthcare, but like the awful things that happened to that country because of the dictatorship are fucking real and cannot be overlooked. Same with Hugo Chavez, you know, like it's a very touchy subject. And all I will say is I think Danny Glover is passionate about workers and human rights, but it's sometimes very easy to get caught in the mud of like, yes, these countries do have that, but also have dictators who have been awful and killed people who have fled to the United States to be free from that. And that cannot be overlooked.
And with that being said, you know, we are here really not to fully talk about his political career, but it is such an ingrained thing into his acting career. But we are here to talk about his acting career. So I think that really sort of covers our rewind. And we've gotten to where he is nowadays. So why don't we move into our picks? And we'll start with our 1-star reviews. Can I tell you that for all of the movies he's done, for all of the cheap things that he's made, for the stuff that you would not consider A-grade material, this was so easy for me. This was so easy for me to pick out a 1-star review. And I think he would agree. And I think he's on my side on this one.
Okay, hit me.
My 1-star review is 1997's Gone Fishing.
Gavin! That is my 1-star review.
Well, I mean, it's the worst.
I am so shook.
It's
because there are so many bad things.
I'm going to just handle this real quick.
Please.
Oh, there are so many bad things. Well, I think what this boils down to, and I'm gonna describe to you in a moment, but this was a movie made for wide release, and like you can forgive like some bad filmmaking, some maybe bad acting, you can forgive all that stuff in a cheap movie because you kind of know it was made by Scotch tape and passion, right?
Right.
This was not.
Yeah.
This was made by
not this one.
No. This was made by Buena Vista Pictures. If you know anything about Buena Vista Pictures, it is Disney. And I just the real quick log line is it's Joe Pesci and Danny Glover, and they're fishing enthusiasts, but they suck at fishing.
They suck at everything.
Absolutely. You also have to understand this is post Dumb and Dumber, and there were a lot of these buddy comedies that were coming out where the characters were becoming stupider because the big film companies thought that that's what people wanted because Dumb and Dumber was such a hit. Essentially, the plot is, and it's very loose, so Danny Glover plays Gus Green, Joe Pesci plays Joe Waters. Ugh. And they're two fishermen, and they're like going. They live in Newark, New Jersey, and they're going down to the Florida Everglades to go angling. They promise to be home by Thanksgiving. Capers ensue. They get involved with a criminal, a British con man who like steals their car. You also find out he's a murderer, which casually gets brought up later. They also run into these two women who were conned by this man, played by Rosanna Arquette and Lynn Wheatfield. And it just goes on and on and on from there. And it's one mishap after another. And none of it is funny. And clearly 90% of the dialogue was improv because almost all the dialogue between Danny Glover and Joe Pesci is like bad improv where one of them says something and the other person just repeats it. And then the other person repeats it. And then the other person repeats it.
What's wrong with us anyway, Gus? I mean, hey, we work hard. We got great families and kids, beautiful wives. We work hard. We go to church. All we like to do is fish. We don't bother nobody.
Yeah, we're lucky, Joe.
Why does everything go wrong around us?
Because we're lucky, Joe.
We're lucky.
Yeah, you said it all, Joe. We got great families. We got kids. Wives love us. You know, we go to church. We work hard. All we do is want to go fishing.
Yeah. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, but that's good.
We are lucky, huh,
We're
guys?
lucky. We're lucky.
Yeah.
Gavin, I just I was freaking out. I was like, oh my god, what was the name of that movie that I really fucking hated? Found it, clicked on the Wikipedia page, scrolled down. Written by whomst? None other but J.J. Abrams.
Oh no.
How dare?
How dare?
No, listen, okay, so this is the second pairing of Danny Glover and Joe Pesci. They were together in Lethal Weapon 2, which
Right.
I actually think Lethal Weapon 2 is very good. I think Danny Glover is a straight guy. Mel Gibson is like the cocaine crazy action guy. And then they added Joe Pesci to kind of be like this comedy humor guy. And I think it works really well. There's like, you get a little bit of everything and they're all very good at what they're doing. In this movie, you just get two idiots and not, and I mean, I'm sorry, but like Jim Carrey, they are not, you know, like
right.
The reason why Dumb and Dumber works is because it's so over the top. These are like comedic geniuses. Joe Pesci and Danny Glover, they are just not the ones. I think not. I think not.
Originally, this film was said to be made in the early 90s, and Joe and Gus were offered to John Candy and Rick Moranis. I read some reports that said, oh, they were both busy and they turned it down for other projects. I've also read reports where they were like, but John Candy died and Rick Moranis retired. Which is like a bad sign to begin with. But also, John G. Avildsen was set to direct the movie and had worked on the film for 2 weeks. Disney didn't like what he was doing, so they fired him, but still had to pay his $2 million salary, and then hired Christopher Kane to replace him. So, like, this movie was already bleeding money to begin with. And then on top of all this, to add insult to injury for this bad, terrible movie, and Danny Glover has admitted in interviews he did this movie solely for money. A stunt woman died. A stunt woman died for this movie.
What the fuck?
There's a scene where a boat is made to jump a ramp, and it landed on top of her, and her husband and father-in-law were also injured in this accident.
Fuck. I hate that so much. Like, this movie is not worth anything. Certainly not anyone's life. Holy shit. That makes me so sad.
In the book Red Lobster, White Trash, and the Blue Lagoon, Joe Queenan, the author of that, says that he was so embarrassed about Joe Pesci that he'd been known to wait outside cinemas showing the film and give customers their money back on behalf of the American Celluloid Retribution Society.
Holy shit.
It holds, and once again, I don't have any trust in review aggregate sites, but it does hold a 4% on Rotten Tomatoes, just to give you sort of the critical consensus.
It is maybe my least favorite movie I've seen for this entire podcast, I will say.
Yeah, it ranks up there. Yeah, because it's tough.
Down there.
Down there. I stopped it in the middle of it and came back like 2 days later because I was like, I have to finish this movie. So yeah, and like,
let's move on from this.
Not real quick though, before we do move on. When we do our 5-star reviews and our 1-star reviews, I oftentimes always try and make sure it's based on performance. And I also, once again, I have to say, Danny Glover's not doing anything here. Genuinely not doing it. There's a scene where he sleepwalks. It's maybe one of the least funny things I've seen in a very long time. I hated the whole experience of this film.
Okay,
yeah.
The one good thing about this movie, and there is only one, is that Carol Kane plays Joe Pesci's wife. And she is always
but
she does nothing, but she's always a delight.
But she does nothing. She's too fucking good for this nonsense. Carol Kane.
She's too good.
She's
too good. Carol Kane, we stand.
I mean, I want to ask if there's any other films that you saw that you didn't particularly like, but I feel like that's kind of a minefield because of sort of what we talked about, the fact that he does a lot of low budget films, and I think
I don't have the time.
Yeah, exactly. I think I really hated Muhammad Ali's Greatest Fight, which was an HBO film he did in 2013 for Stephen Frears, and he's not really in the movie that much, so I wouldn't give it my 1-star review for him because I don't think he was bad in it. But it's a bad movie. I hated 2012. He's not necessarily the problem. He does get a good Independence Day speech.
Okay.
I'll give him that. I know I'm probably not making any friends here, but I didn't really like Operation Dumbo Drop, mostly because I thought it was really strange that it's a film about the Vietnam War that's not about the Vietnam War at all.
Okay, Gavin, it's for children. Relax.
I know, but come on. Then choose another war. Choose something that's simpler. And I did also actually want to give a good shout out to Pushing Dead, which is on Amazon Prime, which is not a good movie. Sorry.
The only thing I can say is that he was in Proud Mary, my least favorite movie, my 1-star review in 2018.
In 2018, I meant to watch it just because I know how much you hated it, but I didn't. I didn't because I kept you in my heart, Louie.
Thank you. That's the biggest disappointment of all. Proud Mary.
All right.
Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move into our 5-star reviews. On the reverse of how easy it was for me to pick my 1-star review, I'm in a bit of a crossroads.
Yes.
I will admit.
A Britney Spears crossroads.
A Britney Spears crossroads. I think if I can talk about the other one, I'll feel better about picking this one. So I think my favorite performance, I have to say, is 1998's Beloved. I know that's probably controversial with you because you did not seem to enjoy it as much, but I think there's something about his performance because there's so many layers to the character that he's playing in the movie. I think there's something to his character of Paul D, who is both attempting to grapple with the sins of slavery, a life in which he spent subservient to other people, and the process of becoming a full person. He said in this one interview about playing Paul D was like being a child that's learning to say no for the first time.
Beloved is about finding the self. What does it mean to find the self? A baby finds itself when he says no for the first time. Yeah. A baby finds itself no. When he says, This was about that. It's the most important journey and part of the healing process is dealing with the issue of slavery. Part of my country's healing process, if it ever gets to it, is dealing with what slavery was and what it did to me. And I thought these men and women who came out of this horror, the most courageous people I ever met.
And that's really what this character was, this man who is so late in life realizing that he has a destiny and he has control of the things around him and the people he talks to and the people he meets. And he's put in this situation where he runs into an old, friendly, person, Sethi, who from his prior life they're both on the same plantation together. They're both free now. And he starts this relationship with her. At the same time, there is guilt and there's pressure, and some of it comes in the form of a poltergeist that's in her house, but other of it comes from the life that they led together. When he finds out what she did in murdering one of her children, rather than having that child go back into a life of slavery, he leaves. He can't take it. It shatters his new reality that he's built for himself.
I put my babies where they'd be safe.
Didn't work though, did it? You boys gone. You don't know where. One girl's dead. The other can't get further than the yard. How did it work?
They ain't at Sweet Home. School teacher ain't got 'em.
Maybe there's worse.
It ain't my job to know what's worse, Paul D. It's my job to know what it is and to keep my children away from it. 'Cause I'd rather know they had peace in heaven than live in a hell here on earth. So help me, Jesus.
What you did was wrong, Seth.
I should have gone back there. Took my babies. Back to Sweet Home.
Yeah, there could have been a way. Some other way.
What way, Paul D?
You got 2 feet, Seth, not 4. You can set aside something for me.
And I think the way that a lot of that is played is so heartbreaking and so deep. I also think, as I mentioned before, it's Jonathan Demme. He does a lot of direct address where the characters stare down the barrel of the camera, where they look directly at you. Most films, obviously, if you're doing a dialogue scene, you have your actors stare off to the side of the camera. And Jonathan Demme loved to have his characters look directly down the lens. And I think you see such a soulful person in Paul D's eyes, such a person that is longing for what we would consider a normal life. And he thinks for a moment he might be able to have it with Sethi, but her past trauma really ruins that for them. It's such an interesting, and it's a complicated character. In a film of complicated characters, he has to be both very stereotypically masculine, but also really sentimental and loving and fatherly to Denver, who's not his own child, suspicious of Beloved, and yeah, it's a complicated performance, and I think he found a way to navigate a lot of that. And plus, lastly, Oprah, I don't know if it can be said enough, because I think, as you mentioned, Beloved has kind of become this punchline. Part of it was also Oprah was this talk show host. She was a TV host. She is so fucking good in Beloved, and she really lays it out and lays it bare. And I think she's such a warming scene partner, such a welcoming scene partner. And I think, I don't know, I think that made it easier for him to adapt and receive what she was putting out in the film. So I would give her some of the credit too for helping craft that performance that he has in the film.
Okay,
but
first of all,
Beloved,
First of all I want to say is that was very beautiful, Gavin, and I loved every second of you talking about Beloved and his performance, because I think you're absolutely right. And what I'm thinking of is he's talked about how his roots trace back to the South, and it reminds me of Sally Field and how she has said that her roots trace back to the South, and that they both have been called upon in their careers to play these characters in the South, and all of what that means. I think we see that in a very different way in Sally Field's Steel Magnolias, and I think we see that again here, not only in Beloved, but in a lot of his movies where he is a person who is having to deal with the circumstances of being a black man in the South in that specific time. So I think you're right. I think you're totally right. My reaction to this movie, and I think most people's reaction to this movie, is it is hard to get through, period, from the beginning. And so it's even hard to even take in the performances, I guess I'm trying to figure out how much do I want to say about what happens in this movie. There is violence in this movie that is not just, I've talked about this a lot of times before with other movies that have violence against people and violence against minority people. But this is not just about that. This is beyond brutal. brutal, brutal, brutal. And I think Oprah has said before, she was like, should we have made this more commercial? Should we have, tried to made this an easier watch for people? But we didn't do that. And she's talked about how she felt like a failure. She felt into this depression after this movie came out. But all that being said, it should not diminish what, as actors, they were called upon to do and what they did do. Because I think you're right. There's a lot. I think I always think about how much pain it must be for a modern actor to step into the role of someone who's having to deal with slavery or the trauma or PTSD of slavery for entertainment. That's fucking awful. Like, you know?
Right.
And yeah, I think Beloved is just not the easy white person movie to like be like, oh yeah, slavery was bad. It's just not that movie.
Right.
It's violent and horrifying in a lot of different ways, and not even just in the way of like white people were bad.
I was just gonna say, I do like the way that there's subtle things in the movie too, where there's a scene where Denver's walking down the street with a boy, and he has to physically move her out of the way, and it just sort of happens in the background almost. He has to physically move her out of the way of an oncoming group of white men. Who are just clearly not just going to like walk through her. And I like that there's stuff that the movie's conscious enough to like comment on, that like the racism is ingrained. It doesn't matter that these are free people now. They will always be lesser in the eyes of these white people. I don't know. And I think the movie is very smart. I do agree with you. It is not an easy watch. However, if you are looking at it and you're like, oh, the runtime is what's keeping me away, because it is an almost 3-hour film. I mean, so is the fucking last Avengers movie, so like if you can sit through an Avengers movie, you can sit through Beloved based on runtime. But you're right. It's not easy. It is really difficult. And it's you do sort of have to steel yourself.
Yeah. What's funny is though, it reminds me a lot of, weirdly enough, Good Fences, about Black people who are dealing with trauma, who have to make really awful decisions, and maybe even the bad decision, the wrong decision, based on what they've experienced. They cannot make the rational, normal person choice, because they don't really have a choice. Society and America has put them in this box that they can't. And so, yeah, like in Good Fences, he is kind of like not a villainous character, but a bad character. He is, being kind of an asshole. And in the same way that Sethi is, making very horrifying decisions. But what is she? What else does she have? What else could she do?
Right.
So yeah, very good, Gavin. I'm glad we got to talk about this, because that movie would have haunted
I was
me.
nervous. I saw your tweet about being half an hour in, and I was like, oh God, oh no, are we going to fight? But
literally 5 minutes in, I was like, this is too much. This is too much. But it's a movie that I think, like, it's like the same reaction I had with 12 Years a Slave. It's like, I have to get through this. I have to, and not only just because like I like watching movies, but because there is truth here. And the truth can be hard and painful, and you don't help yourself by blinding yourself to it. But all that being said, you don't have to enjoy it.
All right, Louis. So what's your 5-star review?
So I think there are very important roles and good things that he's done. And there was honestly a little while where I was like, am I going to talk about Lethal Weapon one more fucking time? Just because I like him so much as this like straight man, family man. And I think it's like the most maybe foundational of his work, and why America has fallen in love with him. But actually, we're going to talk about a movie that we have brought up before, and it's 2016's Mr. Pig.
Oh,
I know. I remember, I was watching this and I was like, why have we talked about this? And it's because it is directed by Diego Luna, a past episode we have talked about as an actor mostly. And it's funny. So I watched a bunch of his old stuff, and I thought, a lot of his like politically minded stuff where he's so passionate, Beloved, The Color Purple, all these movies where he is clearly, even Places in the Heart, Mr. Pig, I watched as kind of like trying to just catch up what he's been doing in the past, in the very recent past. And so Mr. Pig is a 2016 movie directed by Diego Luna, also starring Maya Rudolph. And it is maybe one of the most quiet but effective uses of Danny Glover. I think a lot of these movies, like from 2010 to now, he's often cast as like crotchety, angry old man who can like maybe do the thing, maybe he can't do the thing, but it's some version of that. And Mr. Pig, he is a man who is fully realized. He has passions. He has dreams. He's a pig farmer, and he's going to Mexico to sell a pig to one of his father's old friends. I think his old friend's son. So like they have like this kind of familial history. And in the hands of Diego Luna, I think it is maybe one of the most respectful depictions of Mexico that I've seen. There's a lot of stuff that I think a lot of American filmmakers would just be like, Mexico's fucking crazy, like, and they don't do that. I know you saw it for Diego Luna's episode, right?
Yes. I have not gone back and listened to that episode in a long time. And I think I maybe perhaps didn't love it. I didn't rewatch it for this. But I think I was talking about it more from, it was very clear it was a first film for me. And right. I did not love Diego Luna's direction. And so perhaps I wasn't watching it from the angle of acting. And so that might be my bad. So, but I'm going to let you talk about it some more.
So I think I was just so taken with, I was like, Danny Glover still fucking has it. And it's maybe because Danny Glover isn't the kind of actor that is going to take material and elevate it. Like, he really needs like good material to go there. And I just supremely enjoyed watching him and Maya Rudolph as a father-daughter duo.
Dad, it's me, Eunice. Open up.
Door's open.
What the hell? Why is there a hog in your motel room?
What are you doing here?
I'm looking for you.
Close the door.
Is he sick?
He's just fine.
How could you just...
Hey,
How could you just take off like that?
I'm busy, okay? Look, so if you're gonna help me. If not, quit bothering me.
And also finally seeing him in one of these later in life roles, similar to watching Sally Field in Hello, My Name is Doris, that is like kind of like this perfect little gift of like showing off like this is a senior actor who is still fucking killing it. And this is a very stubborn man who's got pride, and he has wants and needs. And for him, he has this beautiful pig friend of his. It's this pig that he's raised, and he's going to go sell it to a friend in Mexico. Finds out that this friend actually has kind of one of those very stereotypical slaughterhouses where, animals are not treated well at all. He gets very shook and is like, fuck no, I'm taking my pig somewhere else. And he just has all this compassion and heart inside of him, and he decides, I'm going to go sell it to another friend who lives deeper into Mexico. And so him and Maya Rudolph and this pig go on this road trip, and you realize that he is sick, and you kind of get the sense that what he wants for this pig is what he wants for himself. This freedom, the able to just like be happy, and yeah, it's just like very quiet, beautiful. There's some funny moments. I mean, I can only imagine Diego Luna behind the camera just being like, "Okay, Danny Glover, have some fun with this pig." And I don't know, it really felt like he was given some space to just, be kind of like the actor that he is, as opposed to like a lot of these other lower budget movies that are kind of like D-list movies where he's, like not a badass or, crotchety old grandpa, for laughs. This is a real human. And I saw all these layers of, him in Color Purple, Beloved, even Lethal Weapon. It's like this family man, but he's older. And I don't know. I thought it was a very beautiful kind of, I don't want to say final act, but kind of, I haven't seen, like, even since then, he doesn't have to be just like the dad who cares about the one thing. This is a man who's caring about himself and wanting to end his life on his own terms. So yeah, Mr. Pig, it's a sweet movie.
And it's on Netflix, so if anybody wants to check it out, it's easily accessible.
Yes.
I know we're going a little long on this one, but is there anything else that you saw him in that you particularly really liked?
If you haven't already seen Places in the Heart from our last episode, I recommend it. I think he's very good in it. He's maybe one of my favorite parts of it. Like we mentioned, Silverado. I think that's a fun movie, like early him.
Yeah.
What about you?
I mentioned earlier the Saint of Fort Washington, which I think is definitely worth a look. And I really liked Honey Dripper, and I know it's not a perfect film. I actually think it's a more middling film for John Sayles. I think he doesn't quite get the dialogue right. Normally his dialogue is really sharp and something like Passion Fish, but I do think there's a lot going on that's worth looking into there.
I saw Honey Dripper. I thought it was fine.
Yeah, that's sort of where I was too, where I was like, this didn't, blow my socks off, but it was, there. Good fences, as we mentioned.
Yes.
But I did mention I was torn at the beginning, and I don't want to go off on too much of a rant, but once again, if I had to pick a second 5-star review, To Sleep with Anger is so, so good. And his performance as this devious entity, like, because he is a man, he's a person, but like he is this force in this film, and he's constantly has his knife out, constantly, just being real sinister, glaring at people, and even when he's being polite, and I really think that that's a deep film more people should see.
Before we get out of here, let's do our mixed reviews.
That's what we call it.
I'm drunk now.
So my 1-star review, which was also shared with you, is 1997's Gone Fishin'.
Gone Fishin', what a movie.
What a movie that exists in the world. And my 5-star review was 1998's Beloved.
Mine was 2016's Mr. Pig.
And you just really waxed so eloquently about it that I might have to give it a rewatch.
I don't know if it's a good, a well-made movie, but I really enjoyed his performance.
Okay, so now we're in our fast forward, and honestly, like we've mentioned before, Danny Glover does not stop working.
Yeah.
And so he's just, there's so many things listed as to what might come out, what might be the next thing. Yeah, and it's a lot of stuff, a lot of, he has this movie called The Drummer that's in post-production, Killing Winston Jones, which has apparently been completed, which looks like it's a film with Richard Dreyfuss and unfortunately Danny Masterson. Ooh, don't act with Danny Masterson. But, he has other things. He's rumored to be in this movie called The Ninja He Will Rise, So
yeah, there's
you
like
know,
there's a lot of D-level franchises. I think the Ninja is one of them.
Yeah.
I just don't know where his career is going. I don't know. He certainly does not give any fucks about Hollywood and like, you know, being a quote unquote prestige actor.
And like I said, in the last year we saw him we saw more of a turn towards the Hollywood stuff again, just for like you know, a quick second between Jumanji: The Next Level, The Dead Don't Die, Last Black Man in San Francisco. Admittedly, the last two I just mentioned are both independent films, but they had major crossover appeal. So you know, it's interesting to see where he goes and what he puts his clout behind, because at this stage that's really what it is it's really like Danny Glover deciding what he's going to put his name on and see if it draws anybody. And I kind of love that. I kind of like that he's just doing whatever he wants to.
He's also just, you know, in his 70s now. I don't expect him to be in, you know, a lot of big budget, flashy movies. He certainly has his pile of fuck you money. He can do whatever he wants.
He has so many NAACP awards, Image Awards, that he, you know, like he's racked them up. The only thing I will say, and I feel like I say this for a lot of actors, is he's only really, in terms of like big stage performances, ever done Master Harold and the Boys. As I mentioned, 1982 original Broadway cast. He also came back to the play in 2003 and played the role of Sam instead of Willie, which was the role that he originated. But I would love to see him do something else on this stage, because really that's like the big thing. And we live in New York City, and someday Broadway will reopen, and you know, maybe he'll get a chance.
God help us, please. The last thing that I've seen him do was Last Black Man in San Francisco, and you know, yeah, it's, you kind of like can feel like the creakiness of him. Kind of same thing when I saw Mr. Pig. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he's got left in the tank. But he is a prolific man. He's given us plenty of amazing performances, plenty to the canon of Black American film. And so to that, I say thank you, Danny Glover, for your work and service. And we are just blessed and lucky to get whatever else he decides to give us, because we don't deserve anything else.
Absolutely. So yeah, that brings us to the end of Danny Glover, which I think was a good and complete episode. But if you want to contact us online about any of our previous episodes or this episode, you can contact us on Twitter at The Mixed Reviews.
You can also contact us on Facebook. Just type in The Mixed Reviews.
If you want to email us, you can email us at reviewsmixed@gmail.com.
We're also on Instagram, _mixed_reviews. We have a bunch of bonus video content that Gavin makes. They're excellent.
And you can listen to us anywhere. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music, iHeartMedia. And if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, and I know I say this every episode, but please leave us a 5-star rating and a review. If you review us, it helps get the word for the podcast out, and other people can listen to us too. And we get to expand our little film family here.
Our little film empire.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Louie and I are going to go talk about what our next subject's going to be, and then maybe we'll have a couple other surprises. You never know.
Yeah, we never know. Yeah, we're gonna really try hard to work on a Mixed Reviews watch party situation. Watch Twitter, please, closely. We'll have some options for some movies. We'll do a little Netflix party and play. Who knows? Just kidding. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. Stay safe out there, and we will see you in 2-ish weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Well, don't send me no doctor. Oh, the doctor can't do me no good. Now, don't you send me no doctor. Well, a doctor can't do me a bit of good. See, it's all my fault. I didn't do the things I should.